Back this morning for a special discussion about the state of public education in America and how the Obama administration, with the help of a political odd couple, is taking on this important issue by challenging conventional thinking.
It is a road trip few would have imagined.
This was a unlikely alliance, allegiance, collaboration.
Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, and Democrat Al Sharpton on a multi-city tour of public schools. The mission, to find out what works,
3, 6, 9, 12.
what needs to change, and what students themselves expect.
You can't just give your students a textbook and say, here, and then put your head down on the desk and go to sleep or start typing emails. You have to really teach. You need special teachers that want to teach.
This trio of political polar opposites is trying to solve a massive bipartisan problem with a workable bipartisan solution.
If we can come together on education, I think it's an example to the kids that some things should be above our differences.
And for the first time, they have the money to do it. Duncan has received an unprecedented level of discretionary spending, $4.3 billion in his Race to the Top fund, where states compete for their share. But will this competition lead to real results? Or will it cause further friction between teachers and administrators, leaving the students without the reform they so desperately need?
And we're joined now by former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. Welcome to all of you. This is such an important topic, and you are all so committed to it. I want to start by defining the problem, what is, above all else, a results problem in public education. These are facts. I spoke to the head of public schools here in Washington, D.C., Michelle Rhee. 50% dropout rate in Washington, D.C. Only 9% of kids going to a D.C. public school, only 9%, will go on to graduate college within 5 years of completing high school. A huge achievement gap between black, white, and Latino kids. Secretary Duncan, this is what you said about public schools this fall. I'll put it up on the screen. What we have to give up on is academic failure. What you have are dropout factories. You have places that for the overwhelming majority of students are simply not doing them justice. To perpetuate something that is chronically underperformed, how can we be wedded to that? So simply stated, what is this president prepared to do about it?
We have to get dramatically better. We have a time of economic crisis in the country. We've been arguing we have a time of educational, academic crisis. We have 1.2 million dropouts a year in this country. How can we sustain that? So we have to dramatically reduce the dropout rate. We have to dramatically increase the graduation rate. And we have to make sure many more of our high school graduates are prepared to be successful in college and in the world of work.
And so the Race to the Top fund and program means what, in a brief description?
We want to reward those states, those districts, those nonprofits that are willing to challenge the status quo and get dramatically better, close the achievement gap, and raise the bar for everybody. And what's been so encouraging is before we spend a dollar, a dime of Race to the Top money, you've seen 48 states come together to raise the bar, higher standards for everyone, to stop lying to children. You've seen states remove barriers to creating new innovative charter schools. You've seen folks get rid of firewalls separating student achievement data from teachers. There's been this extraordinary movement in the country before it spent $1. Now we have a chance to spend billions of dollars to help encourage that continued improvement.
I should point out, you used to run Chicago public school system, and we'll get to some of the specific challenges to Race to the Top that I've identified through my reporting this week. But what's striking about this is saying to the country, we're not going to dole all this money out, billions of dollars, which education secretaries don't normally have at their disposal. We're going to make you show us something for it. Go out there and compete, show us reform, and then we'll give you money.
We all have to take responsibility, and simply perpetuating the status quo is not going to get the kind of dramatically different results we want. So we're states, we're districts, we're nonprofits, we're universities, parents, teachers, community leaders, where we all come together and say we want something dramatically different. We're willing to behave in different ways. We're willing to move outside our comfort zones. We're willing to collaborate. We want to put lots of money behind those places that will literally lead the country where we need to go.
Newt Gingrich, conservative Republican, former House Speaker. Why is this a vision that you support?
Well, first of all, education is the number one factor in our future prosperity. It's the number one factor in national security. And it's the number one factor in these young people having a decent future. I agree with Al Sharpton. This is the number one civil right of the 21st century. So if the president has shown real leadership, which he has, this is a lot of places we fight. On this one, He has said every parent should know whether the school is good. Every student should have transparency about the results. Every parent should have the right to choose a charter school. Now, I would go further. I'd like to have a Pell Grant for K through 12. But this is a huge step for this president to take.
Can we just take a minute to explain how a charter school works?
Arne knows more than I do about this, but basically a charter school operates within a framework of direct public funding, but is allowed to be more innovative, have its own work rules, have its own model of activity. Very often has a specialized focus. But do you want to expand on that for a second? Because you're the
I just want to say, as a country, we need more good schools. And good charter schools are a piece of the answer. Bad charter schools are a piece of the problem. But we've seen in many historically underserved communities charter schools being part of the answer, where students are getting great educations. But as a country, our best schools are world class. We have a lot of schools in the middle. They're improving. What we have, though, is we have schools at the bottom where we're perpetuating poverty. We're perpetuating social failure. We have to stop doing that, and we have to create options and opportunities for children and communities that have been underserved for far too long.
You want to pick up,
Yeah,
though, on your
I just want to
opening
give you one example that we all visited, because I think every American should understand there is no excuse for accepting failure. We visited the Mastery School in Philadelphia, second most violent school in the city, 25th percentile in outcome. 3 years ago, the state became desperate, took over the school, turned it over to Mastery, which is a charter school system, same building, same students. 3 years later, they're in the 86th percentile, and as one young man said to us, an 11th grader, everyone in the 11th grade plans to go to college in this inner city, poor neighborhood. And one young man said to us, in the old school, he fought because he was expected to. Now he doesn't fight because it's not tolerated. So there's no violence and real achievement. Every parent in the country should demand that their child be in a school of that caliber, and that the change be now, not in 5 or 10 years.
Al Sharpton, why is this a vision you support?
You know, I was challenged by James Mtume, who's a music icon and talk show host, on why I and National Action Network, our group, was not dealing with education. It was a civil rights issue. When he showed me the data, 55% of blacks get a diploma, 58% of Latinos, 78% of whites. I looked at this achievement gap, which was almost identical to 1954 when I was born, the year of Brown versus Board of Education. And I said, how are we ignoring this? Then when I looked at the broader data, that we were in 1970, we were like 30 as a country. Now we're 15% of the people in the world that is dealing with graduates. We are going backwards in a technological age as a country, and in my community, we're getting inexperienced teachers, unequal education. So if this means that we have to come together and make alliances to deal with the fact that almost half of the young people in my community are not even getting a high school diploma, I think the president is right. And when the president challenged us, I think you've got to go beyond your comfort zone, because what we have been doing has not worked.
Can you both concede that both political parties have stood in the way of reform through disagreement about education policy? I mean, in 1995, Speaker Gingrich, you were an advocate of dismantling the Department of Education. Here you are as a champion for a vision from the Department of Education about school reform.
Look, I mean, if you ask me in an ideal world, would I re-empower local school boards? Yes. Would I re-empower people to have a range of choice how to spend their money? I'd give every child a Pell Grant.